although Colombia is changing a lot and is much more welcoming for international people, there was no such a diversity. So as you walk around Melbourne or any suburb around, you find all these tastes from all these cuisines around the world, and it was amazing.
Nicolas Ojeda Amador is a baker at Casa Nata, which makes amazing Portuguese tarts in Melbourne. He moved from Colombia in 2018 as an international student, and he has really diverse experience working with everything from migration agencies and now in multicultural communications. Nicolas, I'm so excited to have you on Dirty Linen. Welcome to the show.
Hola, Dani. Thank you so much for having me.
I have to quote you, first of all. When we were emailing back and forth about this chat, you said something to me which really struck me. You said, "I love food, but I'm a bit of an outsider. I studied literature, philosophy and education, but I always believe when we read, we eat ideas."
Yes, well, that's actually what I believe on.
I love it. Well, tell us a bit about yourself. What brought you from Colombia to Australia?
Well, what could I say from my side? I grew up in the capital city of Colombia, which is a nice but very beautiful and cold city, which sometimes surprise people because South America could be also very cold. I study, as you just said, philosophy, literature, and education. And when I was working in a bookstore in Colombia, where we were sort of meeting with food and books and vinyls, I just really wanted to learn something new and have the beautiful opportunity to travel to Australia to study English. And here I am.
Amazing. And you're baking Portuguese tarts. Tell us about your work at Casa Nata.
Well, at Casa Nata, it happens right few months after they open. Of course, we all know what happened with the pandemic. Australia completely closed, and I was working with a migration agency. And, well, because migration was not available, I thought, what I'm going to do now? And I just talked with my old employer, and I said, I guess I'm going to follow a little bit of my passion right now. And I messaged the guys on Instagram, and I said, I love your tarts, and although I'm not a baker, I want to learn. And they opened the doors, and since then I'm the baker with them.
That's so interesting. Tell us about Casa Nata as a business and about the tarts that you make. What makes them so good? What lured you in?
Casa Nata is owned by Nelson Cortiño and Ruben Bertolo. These two very beautiful guys that they also outsiders. So there are no cookers or pastry chef as a profession, but they just really love food. And they thought, why not to bring the best Portuguese tarts to Melbourne? So they did the research in Lisbon and Portugal, trying to test every single pastel de nata in that country. And with the research, they come back to Australia with local produce, and they start creating those tarts. And they actually start creating those tarts and selling them at the Victoria Market. And they became popular. The pandemic happened, but they thought, why not to open a shop? And they opened this shop in Thornbury in 2020. And they face, as many other businesses, multiple lockdowns, but they keep on going. People were supporting them, and because everything was made on scratch, supporting very local producers, people really fell in love with this idea.
Yeah, I mean, pastel de nata, these Portuguese custard tarts, they are such a perfect food, with this really beautiful flaky pastry, the jiggly custard, just a little bit caramelized on top. They're just, I can understand that it would go well through lockdown when everybody needed that little bit of extra comfort at times, a bit of sweetness in our lives. What do you love about making them?
Well, I guess, the other day, actually, someone asked me what is my favorite part of baking. And I did a joke and I said, well, my favorite part of baking is the eating. And I I just at first I just love the balance, which is savory and sweet. But then when I start learning how to bake them, it's quite interesting. For example, it takes uh, around 4 to 5 days to make just one tart because of the process of the hydratation of the flour, the lamination, and everything needs to rest before you will be able to bake it. And you will bake it for 400 degrees top and bottom for 7 minutes. And that process of patience and step by step was actually what I like the most.
That's really interesting. You love the process. And so, Nicholas, it's not the only job that you have. Tell us about your other work.
Well, currently I work for this agency named ThinkHQ. They do research and communications, and they currently leading the transcreation process, which is creating multicultural communications for diverse background communities. And so different government agencies came with ideas to approach those communities that might not understand English well and how to do the communication so they will benefit for programs of activities or will they understand what is going on in Australia. As we know, we just learned that half of Australia came from either overseas, their parents were born overseas, or they are like myself, a migrant. And this is important to recognize and value languages. So I work on that. And I guess in the spare time, I also volunteer for the Jara Council. They have this program in the Jara libraries to support people maybe with disabilities so they don't have access to laptops or computers and how we can just teach. Because I guess as I share with you, one of my passions is teaching. So I guess everything is just well connected because if you can share something nice and sweet, like a Portuguese tart or like information to help someone, why not to do it?
That's so beautiful. And at Think HQ, what are some of the streams of communication? Like what sort of topics what are some of the projects that you've been helping people with communication?
Well, one of the biggest projects we just had was Racism, It Stopped With Me, which is this big campaign, the national campaign anti-racism from the Australian Human Rights Commission that is sort of trying to increase awareness and teach Australians how to stop racism because it could happen everywhere, but it could really stop with the individual actions. The other campaign we just worked on was creating this chatbot, the first multilingual chatbot in Victoria with different languages that can provide information in the language of the community. And it's as easy as to go on WhatsApp and say, hi, I need information about my restaurant, for example. How can I get support if my staff got COVID? Or what happened with the current restrictions? Or what happened if I need support with housing? And this is the type of marketing and ideas that the ThinkHQ team is working on.
Wow, that's so cool. So like a Victorian government website, for example, you could have a multilingual chatbot that's helping you find the information that you need.
Yes, or for example, with WorkSafe, or for example, the other one that I'm working in supporting of the voice talent or translations is for the public transport. How to bring people together to use and be proud of the public transport in Melbourne, and how this is part of the culture.
Oh, that's so interesting. So to be proud of public transport.
And be proud of what we have here, which is, I think, what I love of Melbourne. You could feel welcome no matter where you came from. But it's still important to work on how you could be safe if we are so diverse.
That's so interesting. So as you've said already, you do bring together so many different strands of activity, I guess, under similar values. It's really interesting. I would love to talk to you about this hospitality as a safe and welcoming place for people from different cultures. I mean, we've spoken on this podcast in the past about racism that people have experienced or witnessed. I think, there are elements of Australia's immigration system which are, which act racist, even if that's not the intention, but there's sort of structural racism in some of the ways that our systems operate. I mean, what kinds of things do you see, feel, experience?
Well, as you know, I work around 2 years for migration agencies, and I felt conflicted because it's well structured. There is great opportunities to migrate to Australia, and there is the pathway to do it. There are ways in where you can create a career in hospitality or being chef or pastry chef, and the opportunities are huge, much more than any other country. But it's bittersweet because sometimes the restrictions or the requirements are not clear enough. There are no straightforward communication with the applicants, and then there is sort of idea in where students try to study as much as they can, but then there is no solution or clear pathways to stay. All states just close the programs, and after students have studied for 4 years, and then they don't have any options because the state don't want them anymore. And that's what happened during the pandemic, which is, I guess, a little bit sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it was a terrible outcome in the pandemic for people who are here on visas. Yeah, just a terrible situation. But I mean, what do you think? I mean, it's still a very confusing system. There are still so many, like thousands of people in limbo. There's almost 1 million visas, I think, that are yet to be processed by the department. I mean, what do you see could be some of the ways of simplifying or creating more a system that welcomes people more?
I guess there are very ways to tackle this issue. One of those is to provide business with clarity. Although that information is on the website, if a local cafe wants to find more people, work as a chef or baristas or anyone who will help them with the restaurant, there is no clear ways on how they can sponsor someone, and they will need to go for the through process, but they need the worker now, and the sponsorship could take 2 years. So then what you do? And having the connection and the information with the business could be a very good start point. But then you have all the other students that they don't know how to do it. And having, for example, in language information will be very useful. Like if you came to Australia, not English, and if you go to the department and you find information in your language that tell you what do you need to do and the steps you need to follow, that will be also fantastic. And because they will delete that barrier of language.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, even as a native English speaker, if you're trying to find out information about visas, it's very complicated and it's very hard to work out which way to turn. I feel like there needs to be almost like concierges for people, for businesses, and for people who are looking to navigate that system of visas and immigration. I know that Melbourne City Council did a little bit of work with that during the pandemic, where they did offer a sort of concierge service for people on visas. But I feel like it needs to be a much more comprehensive program that helps people navigate this labyrinth of regulations.
Yes, and Study Melbourne is also a great organization that provides information, but still there is something missing. And I guess because of the work I do with Think HQ, providing information in the language could be, and it is, very useful.
Absolutely. And what about hospitality as do you think hospitality is a safe space for people from all kinds of different cultures?
I guess it is. I have always felt welcome at any of the restaurants I have worked before. Like I was very welcome at Pisami, a place in Ivanhoe that unfortunately closed because of the pandemic. I felt amazingly welcome at Very Good Falafel, this very tasty and incredible place in Brunswick. But then what happens is, as a migrant, the idea was how restaurant or the hospitality sector could be a safe workplace. And if it's safe, I think it is. I think it welcomes people, and I felt welcome every single time. But that was my first experience in Ivanhoe, in Pisami, a restaurant that unfortunately closed because of the pandemic, or with Very Good Falafel, this amazing, very tasty place in Brunswick. But then it's because, well, I think the hospitality sector is well prepared and is always open for people with diverse backgrounds, and is the place, or it was the place for me, where I really learned English, where I met new people, and I think what it could be is hospitality and restaurants could teach other industries how they can welcome people, how they can treat well people from different backgrounds, because it's a different story in all the different industries where you must have specific English or an accent, and you must have different things at restaurants. And it's something that it surprised me a lot, is that you will find in a restaurant in Melbourne people that are not just came from different countries, but the lawyers, the engineers, the designers, the artists that came from different countries, and that sort of makes the restaurants could be a safe place to work.
It's really interesting. And I love the way you talk about it as, that hospitality has a lot to teach other industries and that people can be proud of it. It makes me think about what you were saying before about, giving immigrants tools to be proud of their city. I mean, it's really, I don't know, there's something about, if you're proud, then there's also a sense of belonging, isn't there? If you've got this, it makes you feel anchored in something, if you can also express your pride in it.
Yes, that's totally right. And yes, of course, there is issues sometimes in terms of payment, and I think there should be a regulations in terms of being casual or part-time, and there are issues in the industry that they need to be looked after in terms of payment. But on the other hand, in terms of feeling safe and welcome because of the place you were born, restaurants can teach a lot to other industries.
So, Nicolas, tell us about Colombia. And, I mean, are you able to compare Bogota with Melbourne? You've mentioned that it's a cold city. But what about the food that you grew up eating or could eat in your home city compared to the food scene in Melbourne?
Oh, my beautiful country. I don't know. Have you ever been in South America before?
Only to Venezuela.
Okay. Oh, but, well, we were sort of part of the same ideas of tastes. Venezuela is an amazing country, and I grew up, well, with Colombian food, which people might be surprised. My Colombian peeps will be surprised, but it's very simple. There are not much spices. The method is quite plain taste, I would say, although it's delicious. But there is not as amazing as other cuisines around the world. But in terms of my city is a city full of bakeries and cafes. It's the city that also welcomes other people from other cities around Colombia, a little bit like Melbourne, I will say. And and although there are bakeries everywhere, there is not a oven culture in Colombia. See that perhaps you said, "Oh, my grandma used to bake a cake for me on my birthday." That such a thing never happened in Colombia. You will go to a bakery and you will ask for a cake, and you will have hundreds of options. But there is no like, "Oh, I bake some biscuits for this activity at school." There is no such a thing, which is quite interesting if I were right now thinking about it, because now I'm working facing a oven every single time.
That's so,
And
yeah, that's really funny. So basically, the typical kitchen in Colombia wouldn't have an oven.
no, I won't have an oven.
Amazing.
But bread is important. So bread is important, and we have our own bread, which they call arepas.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
and arepas, we have like 100 different types of arepas, which are made corn base. And well, you don't need an oven because they pan fry. So that will be our main showcase. Like a pastel de nata in Lisbon, we have arepas in Colombia.
Beautiful. And so how did Melbourne strike you when you moved here in terms of the food that was on offer?
Oh well, a lot. It was a huge surprise. I never tried a curry before in my life, and I never really taste that many cuisines at once. Because although Colombia is changing a lot and is much more welcoming for international people, there was no such a diversity. So as you walk around Melbourne or any suburb around, you find all these states from all these cuisines around the world, and it was amazing. So I learned names of spices or vegetables for the first time in English, and when I tried to explain to my family in Colombia what I was eating before, I don't know how to say it in Spanish because my first taste was here.
That's so interesting. Nicholas, what about the future? What are your aspirations? Do you see your life unfolding for you here in Australia?
Yes, I'm very lucky that I could call Australia home. So yes, I think Australia will be the place in where I'm going to continue learning and tasting and hopefully helping different people. And of course, I will definitely continue, and I would love to continue working with Casa Nata. And I don't know, maybe because I think that Casa Nata has the potential to become a place that you must go if you come to Melbourne, like as huge as Loon, perhaps, maybe, I don't know. and and study, as I said, and I share with you. I don't know if I should study pastry or if I should continue and do a master's degree in communication and literature. But I guess both can be done together, because I'm just trying to understand, to taste all ideas that eventually will create something delicious, full of everything good in life. And I guess if I'm continue trying to find that understanding, I will be happy in the future.
Wow, Nicholas. Well, I've loved chatting to you. You make the world seem very big and full of possibilities, but also pretty cozy and connected. So I love your perspective on life. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Well, I guess I just want to thank you for the great job you have done in the last couple of years. I started following you because you provide clarity to international students with regard of restrictions on opportunities, also with businesses, telling them when the new program was open for sponsorship, and showcasing that we all, although we come from different backgrounds, we all love food, and food could be the place where we can all come together. So thank you so much for the space you have been created in the last couple of years.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. I'm glad if it's made a little bit of a difference. And I definitely will take from our conversation that when we read, we eat ideas. And I feel like it just gives me another way to be hungry. So that's good too.
And there will be always a little gap to trace and have a delicious Portuguese tart if you ever go to Casa Nata.
Definitely. Love it. Okay. Thanks so much, Nicolas. Great to chat.
Thank you so much, Dani.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta @dirtylinen podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.